The chain snapped hard against the wood and the stable door burst inward. He barely had time to breathe before the girl screamed. It was raw and animal and close enough to tear through him. He froze with one hand still on the chain. She slammed herself backward into the stall wall, metal clanking as her wrist yanked tight. Straw kicked up. Her eyes were wide and wet and empty all at once. He held both palms up like that alone could fix it. Hey! Hey! She shook her head fast, teeth chattering, body folded in on itself. I'm not him. The words came out too quick, like he was afraid of his own voice. I'm not him. She stared past him at the open door, waiting for something worse. He swallowed. Who did this? She pressed her lips together. He took a step closer and stopped when she flinched again. I said I'm not him. Silence pressed down on them. Dust hung in the light. Her breathing sounded broken. He eased the canteen off his belt and set it on the dirt between them. Water. He nudged it with his boot. You don't gotta take it. She didn't move. Her eyes dropped to the canteen, then to his hands. He backed up a step. I'll turn around. He did. He counted his breaths. The chain rattled once. Then nothing. When he turned back, the canteen was tipped and her mouth was wet. She wiped it with the back of her hand and smudged dirt across her cheek. How long you been here? No answer. He looked past her then, really looked. The stall wall was carved up. Names. Dates. Some crossed out. Some carved deep like the wood had fought back. He leaned closer. These yours? She followed his eyes and stiffened. Don't read them. I'm not. He lied without thinking. His gaze slid to her shoulder where her shirt was torn. A mark sat there, old and burned in. A simple shape. He knew it. Everyone did. He laughed before he meant to. It came out wrong. That ain't funny, he said to himself, still smiling like an idiot. That's county stock. She watched him, waiting for the turn. He felt it then, the ground shifting under something he thought was solid. She spoke once. Just once. Sheriff. The word barely cleared her throat. He laughed again, louder, to kill it. No, he shook his head. You're mixed up. She didn't argue. She just stared. The laugh died when he looked back at the brand. Same curve. Same break in the line. He remembered the irons lined up in the shed. He remembered men joking about property. Say it again. His voice dropped. She didn't want to. He took a breath and softened it. Please. She swallowed. Sheriff. It landed heavier the second time. He backed away until his shoulders hit the stall door frame. That don't make sense. She tugged the chain and the metal bit into her skin. He said it was safer. The words came faster now, like once started they wouldn't stop. He said the land remembers. Hoofsteps sounded outside. Slow. Familiar. A voice carried in, calm as always, calling his name. He turned toward the light as the stable door opened wider, his heart already pounding like it knew what was standing there. The sheriff filled the doorway without stepping inside. Light cut around his shoulders and left his face in shadow. One hand rested on the frame like it belonged there. You weren't supposed to be back here. His voice was calm, almost lazy. The ranch hand didn't answer right away. He found himself standing in front of the girl without deciding to. She's locked up. The sheriff's eyes slid past him to the chain on her wrist. She's being kept safe. The girl pressed herself tighter against the wall. Her lips moved. Don't. The sound barely lived. The sheriff smiled when he heard it. Easy. He said a name then, soft, familiar, like it was a gift. The ranch hand felt his stomach turn. He'd never heard that name before. The girl flinched hard, like the word had struck her face. "That ain't her name," the ranch hand said. The sheriff stepped inside at last. The stable shrank. "It's the one she answers to." He looked at the ranch hand the way men looked at broken tools. "Step aside." It wasn't said like a threat. It was routine. The ranch hand hesitated. It shocked him. He'd stepped aside his whole life. He didn't now. The sheriff's eyes narrowed just enough to show he noticed. "Don't do this." The ranch hand shook his head. "You can't keep her like this." The sheriff sighed and reached out. The girl screamed. She folded in on herself, arms up, chain biting into skin. The sound tore through the wood. The ranch hand shoved the sheriff's arm away before he could think. It was the first time he'd ever laid a hand on him. The air went still. The sheriff stared at his own hand like it had failed him. "You just made this complicated." His voice flattened. He straightened and adjusted his hat. "You don't know what you're standing in." The ranch hand swallowed. "I know she's hurt. She's dangerous. She's a kid." The sheriff laughed once. "Not anymore." He glanced at the carvings on the wall. "Always leaving marks." He looked back at her. "You should have stayed quiet." She shook, teeth clicking. "You said you'd let me go." The sheriff crouched, slow, careful. "I said I'd keep you safe." He stood again. "That's what this is." Something old rose in the ranch hand's chest. He remembered his mother pulling him inside when the sheriff drove past. Curtains drawn. Voices lowered. He stepped closer to the girl. "You gotta leave." The sheriff's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me." "I'll take her." The words surprised them both. The sheriff studied him for a long beat. "You don't have that authority." "Then arrest me." The sheriff smiled wider. "Not yet." He backed toward the door. "We'll talk later." At the threshold, he looked back at the girl. "Don't move." She whispered, "Please." He ignored it. The door shut. The lock clicked. The ranch hand let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He crouched beside her, careful not to touch. "We're not staying." Her voice shook. "He'll come back." "I know." Hoofsteps moved away outside. The ranch hand stared at the closed door, knowing she was right. The sheriff stood in the doorway without crossing the line. His body blocked the light, turning the stable dim and close. His shadow stretched across the dirt and stopped at the girl's bare feet. He spoke like this was his place, like nothing here surprised him. "You weren't supposed to be back here." The ranch hand didn't move. He stayed planted between the sheriff and the stall. "She's locked up." The sheriff tilted his head, listening the way men do when they already know the answer. "She's being kept safe." The girl shook so hard the chain rattled. Her voice slipped out thin and cracked. "Don't." The sheriff smiled at the sound. "It's all right." He said her name then, slow and personal, like he was reminding her who she belonged to. The ranch hand stiffened. He'd never heard that name before. The girl flinched like she'd been struck. "That's not her name," the ranch hand said. The sheriff finally stepped inside. The doorframe creaked behind him. "It's the one she answers to." His eyes flicked to the brand on her shoulder, then back to the ranch hand. "Step aside." He said it the way men say pass the salt. Easy. Practiced. The ranch hand felt his legs hesitate. It scared him more than the sheriff did. He didn't step aside. The sheriff's jaw tightened just enough to notice. "Don't be stupid." The ranch hand swallowed. "You can't keep her chained." The sheriff sighed, like he was tired of explaining. "This land eats girls like her." "Then why's she here?" The sheriff reached out. The girl screamed and collapsed inward, arms wrapping her head. The chain snapped tight and cut her skin. The sound split the air. The ranch hand shoved the sheriff's arm away. It happened before thought. The sheriff froze. They stared at each other. The sheriff looked at his own hand, then back up. His voice lost its warmth. You just made this complicated. He straightened and adjusted his belt. You don't know how many times I've done this. Done what? Kept things quiet. The sheriff glanced at the carved names on the wall. You see what happens when they talk. The girl whispered, you promised. The sheriff didn't look at her. I promised to keep order. The ranch hand stepped closer to her. She's scared. She should be. The sheriff smiled thin. Fear keeps people alive. The ranch hand shook his head. You're lying. The sheriff laughed once, sharp. So are you. He took a step closer. The ranch hand didn't move. Get out of my way. No, the words surprised them both. The sheriff studied him, slow. Your mama ever tell you why she didn't like me? The ranch hand felt something old twist in his gut. He remembered curtains closing. Voices dropping. He didn't answer. I did her favors, the sheriff said. Same as I'm doing now. The girl shook her head hard. You hurt them. The sheriff finally looked at her. I kept the peace. You buried them. The ranch hand felt his chest burn. Let her go. The sheriff's smile faded. Not tonight. He backed toward the door. Think real careful. At the threshold he stopped. Don't move, he told the girl. She whispered, please. He didn't respond. The door closed. The lock slid home. The ranch hand exhaled. His hands shook. He crouched near her, careful. We're leaving. Her eyes stayed on the door. He'll come back. I know. Outside, footsteps faded, slow and certain. The ranch hand led her behind the barn, careful to keep low, careful to keep quiet. The girl's wrists still bore the marks from the chain. Don't touch me, she hissed, but her voice was softer now. I'm not him, he said again, holding the chain loose in his hand. She didn't flinch this time, just kept her eyes on the ground. The well house crouched in the shadow of the old barn, boards warped, door hanging uneven, the kind of place everyone in town avoided. He opened it, letting the smell of old wood and dust hit them. Sit, he said, motioning to the corner. She did, knees pulled up, arms tight around them. He leaned against the wall opposite, feeling every creak of the floorboards. How long were you there? His voice was low. She didn't look up. Long enough. He swallowed. Anyone else know? She laughed once, dry and sharp. They all know. He frowned. Who? She spat the word out. Men in clean shirts. Men who think the ground keeps secrets. He looked around. Shelves lined with jars caught his eye. Cloudy, dusty glass. Paper inside. What's this? He reached for one. Don't, she said. Her voice was sharp. He froze. I won't read. They're not for you. He pulled his hand back. Who put them here? Women who didn't leave. She hugged her knees tighter. They come at night. Who? The lamb listens, she said, barely a whisper. He shivered, thinking of the sheriff, the county, the power in names left unspoken. That don't make sense, he said. It makes sense here, she replied. Mama said the well remembers. The word struck him. He remembered his own mother, pulling curtains, lowering voices, teaching him silence. She warn you? He didn't need to say more. She nodded. Never say his name. You said it. She closed her eyes. I was tired. He let it hang. The room smelled like straw, dust, and old fear. One jar rolled off the shelf with a soft clink. He caught it. Paper rattled inside. He pried the lid. Names, dates, scratches in faded ink. He froze on one. A girl he remembered from town, gone for years. My mama knew, he said quietly. Everyone's mama knew, she replied. Another jar. Another name. He swallowed. The room seemed to shrink. The light outside shifted. Headlights swept across the field, catching cracks in the boards. She stiffened. He's here. Quiet, he whispered. Doors slammed somewhere in the distance. Voices low, familiar, dangerous. She buried her face into his jacket. They listen, she whispered. Not tonight, he said, holding her arm lightly. His chest ached from tension, from memory, from knowing the sheriff would not stop. Shadows moved across the boards as the lights paused. He could see a deputy's silhouette against the bright windshield. He held his breath. She trembled. Go, she said. I won't, he replied, feeling the weight of her fear, the weight of the land remembering. A knock came at the well-house door. Soft, deliberate. A voice called his name. Calm. Friendly. Familiar. His stomach dropped. He stared at the door, counting seconds that stretched like hours. The girl squeezed her eyes shut. He put a hand on her shoulder. Stay down. Another knock. She whispered, he'll know. Not yet. They waited, every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the wind sounding like a warning. He could hear the metal jars clinking in the shelves. She whispered again, they know everything. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. We're not theirs tonight. Outside, the headlights paused, then moved. Shadows recoiled, then returned. He could hear hoofbeats far off, steady, deliberate. The girl pressed her face to his chest, trembling. He ran a hand through his hair. We need a plan. I'm not leaving, she said. You are. No, then we fight, he said. Silence fell. They both listened, heartbeats loud. The well house felt alive, listening back. He won't stop, she said. Neither will I, he said. Another vehicle rumbled close. Tires on dirt. Headlights skimming the boards. He pressed his back against the wall. Stay quiet. Move only when I say. She nodded, trembling. The shadows shifted again. Every sound carried across the empty field, echoing off memory-soaked walls. The jars rattled. Names, dates, stories whispered in dust. He thought of his mother again, of her warnings, of the sheriff's smile when children forgot their place. He thought of her, the girl, and the steel growing in her eyes despite the fear. We'll make it, he whispered. Tonight, we survive. She didn't answer, but her grip on him tightened. Outside, headlights stopped. The engine hummed low. The knock came once more. He held his breath, letting time stretch between beats, knowing every second mattered. Ready? He asked. She opened her eyes and nodded, just slightly. That was enough. He whispered, then we start. The widow arrived without knocking, her boots silent against the packed dirt. The ranch hand barely had time to register her before she was there, in the doorway, calm, controlled, like she had been expecting this all along. Her eyes flicked to the girl, then back to him. You finally found one alive, she said, voice low but carrying weight. The girl stiffened. She didn't move. The ranch hand glanced at the widow, confusion and suspicion on his face. Who are you? He asked. The widow smiled faintly. Someone who stayed. She stepped inside, eyes scanning the room, lingering on the carved names, the chains, the jars. They think silence keeps them safe, she said. They were wrong. She crouched near the girl, steady, deliberate. I know it's hard to trust. I've been watching. Waiting. Some of us never leave. The girl flinched at the words but didn't move. Why are you here? The ranch hand asked. The widow glanced at him, calm. To help her survive. She placed a hand near the girl's shoulder. She won't leave, you know that, right? The girl's eyes met hers. She shook her head, slight, firm. Good, the widow said. She's strong enough. Stronger than they think. She rose, brushing dust from her skirt. They count on fear. But fear doesn't live in everyone. The ranch hand noticed the lines around her eyes, the way she carried herself, controlled and practiced. You knew, he asked. Years, she said. I've seen what happens when men like him think no one is watching. She turned to the girl. You don't have to go anywhere. The girl whispered, I can't stay. You can, the widow said. You belong here. They just don't want you to believe it. She reached behind her back and brought forward a small revolver. Old, worn, engraved on the handle with a name he didn't recognize. Your mother's, the widow said. She left it for the girls who never ran. For the ones who stayed alive. The girl's fingers trembled as she took it. The ranch hand's stomach nodded. Is that safe? The widow's eyes met his. Safer than running. Outside, a branch scraped against the wall. The girl flinched, tightening her grip on the revolver. The widow put a hand on the ranch hand's shoulder. They'll come, she said. Don't be afraid. Not yet. They still believe silence is stronger than truth. A sudden knock sounded at the front door, soft and deliberate. The widow's expression didn't change. It's the deputy, she said, almost like a warning. He comes first, curious, checking the edges. Then the others follow. The girl looked at the door, fear and resolve mixing in her eyes. He'll find me, she said. Not if you're ready, the widow replied. The ranch hand stepped between them instinctively, hands tight at his sides. We can't fight them all. The widow's lips pressed in a thin line. We don't have to fight them all. Just enough. She crouched beside the girl again. Your voice matters. Even when they try to steal it. The girl's grip on the revolver tightened. What if I fail? You won't, the widow said. You won't. The knock came again, firmer this time. Hooves clattered faintly on the dirt outside. The widow didn't flinch. They think they control the land. They don't. We do. That's why we stay. That's why we fight quiet. The ranch hand looked at her. I didn't know it was like this. She shook her head. Most don't. They see the surface. The rumors. But the land remembers. The walls remember. Even the jars remember. They hear the names, the pleas. We don't forget. The girl's eyes moved to the jars, tracing names and dates with her finger. She whispered, they all died. Some, the widow corrected. Some stayed alive. And some keep fighting even after the others are gone. That's us. She rose slowly. You'll see. They won't take what we keep safe. Outside, the knocking stopped, replaced by silence. The ranch hand exhaled, chest tight. The girl held the revolver, trembling but resolute. The widow turned toward the door one last time, scanning the shadows beyond the wall. Be ready, she said softly. They'll come again. But tonight, you survive. That's what matters. She left them for a moment, silent and watchful. The girl's fingers tightened around the gun. The ranch hand nodded at her. No words were needed. Together, they listened to the night, waiting for the next move, knowing survival was a quiet kind of victory. The fire crackled in the barrel, orange light licking the walls of the well house. Smoke curled into the rafters, thick and heavy. The ranch hand fed another stack of papers into the flames. He didn't look at the girl. She watched, knees drawn up, fingers wrapped around the old revolver. Are they all gone? She asked. The ranch hand shook his head. Not yet. But this is what we have. Enough to start. The girl's eyes followed the fire. The edges of the documents curled, letters turning black before they disintegrated. "I remember the first night," she said, voice low, almost lost in the crackle. "I didn't know where I was. I thought no one would find me. I thought," she swallowed, shivering. "I thought I'd be gone forever." The ranch hand crouched beside her. "I believe you." The words came out loud, firm. She blinked at him, startled. "You do?" He nodded. "I do." The smoke stung his eyes. The paper hissed as the edges blackened, turned to ash. "Then let it burn," she said. Her hands shook, pushing another pile into the barrel. Sparks floated up, catching in the dark. Flames leapt higher. Shadows stretched across the walls. The names, the dates, the carved marks, all devoured by fire. But somehow the fire revealed more than it destroyed. Old marks glowed, symbols etched into the wood, charred but visible. They told stories of fear, control, and the silences forced into generations. The girl watched them burn, remembering every night. Chained, every shadow that passed outside. "He knew," she whispered. "The sheriff." The ranch hand didn't answer. The smoke made it hard to breathe. "I thought no one believed me," she said. Her voice cracked. "But you do." "I do." They stayed quiet, letting the fire speak. Outside, hoofbeats echoed faintly across the field. The wind shifted smoke toward the edges of the barn. He heard voices, men moving in the distance, their shouts swallowed by the night. "They'll come," he said. The girl's eyes narrowed, face set. "Then let them." Sparks floated like tiny ghosts, swirling around them. He thought of the jars, the letters, the carved names, all gone now. Only memory remained. She finally stood, stepping toward the fire, not away. He caught her wrist. "Don't." She looked at him. "I have to." The glow of the flames reflected in her eyes. She walked closer. The heat warmed her skin, but fear still lingered. She lifted her hand, pointing at the fire. "This is mine now. Every word, every mark, every scream, they belong to me." The ranch hand watched, silent. He knew she meant it. Every shadow in the corners of the room, every whisper in the smoke, every name burned, it was hers now. The fire roared, a living thing, filling the space with light and heat. He took a step back. "It's too much," he said. "No," she replied, voice steady. "It's enough." The sheriff's men were torching the other end of the property, clearing the evidence they couldn't touch tonight. Smoke drifted across the ranch, a signal to anyone watching that something had shifted. The girl didn't flinch. She watched the horizon, the orange glow reflected in her eyes, knowing that fear could no longer own her. She pulled the revolver from her side, checking it. The ranch hand shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "Wait." She lowered it. Sparks fell onto the dirt. Tiny embers floated, landing on straw and turning black. The walls groaned. He watched her, memorizing the way she moved, the way she claimed the night. "They'll think they've erased it all," he said. "Let them." The girl exhaled slowly, the heat on her face. "It's not the paper they fear," she said. "It's the truth." He nodded. "And now?" She smiled faintly. "Now, it burns for everyone to see." The flames rose higher, licking at the ceiling, a living record of memory and defiance. The ranch hand felt the heat on his face, the weight of the night pressing down, and he realized the girl was no longer afraid of being seen. The smoke swirled, and in its dance, he saw the names she remembered, the nights she survived, the lives stolen, and the lives that remained. She stepped closer, closer to the barrel, closer to the fire itself, as if walking into it would make it hers entirely. He reached for her, but she shook him off gently. "This is mine," she said again, firm. Sparks flew around her. The walls groaned as the fire consumed the last papers. Outside, he heard the distant sound of hooves, slow and deliberate. Smoke carried across the land like a warning. The girl didn't move away. She stood in the glow, arms folded, chest lifted, as if daring the night to challenge her. "They think fire can destroy truth," she whispered. "But it only reveals it." He let her stand there, letting her own courage fill the room. The fire flared, bright, consuming, illuminating the jars, the walls, the marks, the memory. She faced it fully, and for the first time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, they had won tonight. The word had slipped past lips like wildfire. At the diner, a man spat his coffee across the table. "Sheriff," he muttered, shaking his head. The waitress froze, hand on the sugar pot. "What?" he said. "The girl said it," she whispered. Outside, engines rumbled past, slow and deliberate. At the gas station, another man repeated it quietly, almost like a prayer. "Sheriff." A young clerk flinched, glancing at the dark street. In the churchyard, whispers floated over the pews, careful, urgent. "Sheriff," someone said. Every head turned. The name carried weight, history, fear. The sheriff felt it before he saw it. Standing on his porch, hat pulled low, he watched the town shift like a tide he could no longer control. His hands clenched the railing. People stared at him, uncertain. Murmurs carried across the square, echoing like dry leaves in wind. The power he had depended on was cracking, and he knew it. The word, that single word, had fractured it. The ranch hand walked the back roads, careful, tense. Every townsperson he passed muttered the word under their breath. "Sheriff," they said, eyes down. He felt the weight of warning in each whisper. "Watch yourself," a man said, stepping from the shadows. "They'll kill you if they catch you with her." The ranch hand nodded, fists tight. "I know." Nights passed in restless tension, every creak in the barn a threat. The girl moved through the fields now, faster, sharper. "They're scared," she said one night, eyes flashing. "They think they own the land." He followed her, silent, watching how her voice grew stronger, faster. The sheriff's grip slipped further every day. A deputy cursed in the street when the girl refused to hide. "Damn girl," he spat, hands shaking. The sheriff barked orders from his porch, futile. People ignored him. Children whispered the word when they passed his men. "Sheriff." Each syllable landed like a blow. The ranch hand returned to the barn, finding more signs of upheaval. Old letters exposed, rumors spread, secret talks now open in whispered tones. He read one letter, hand shaking. It spoke of girls lost, of men in power, of silences that had stretched decades. He crumpled it, anger and fear twisting together. The girl crouched beside him. "It's working," she said. "It's moving." He nodded but said nothing. Hooves pounded the distant field, warnings in rhythm. The sheriff's men were tightening, trying to regain control. The ranch hand felt the threat, close and real. They weren't hiding anymore. They were visible. The girl's eyes glinted in the moonlight. She spoke faster, sharper, a steady rhythm now. "No one's safe." They lied. They hid it all. Each word drove the story further, echoing through the empty barns and abandoned fields. One afternoon, near the county line, the earth gave up a secret. A mass grave, shallow, strewn with old clothes, bones half buried, caught by the sun. The girl walked slowly, revolver hanging loose, fingers tracing the dirt. "They thought no one would know," she said, voice low, heavy. The ranch hand knelt beside her. "Now they do." Silence stretched, broken only by wind and distant hooves. The word that had spread like fire across the town now found its home in the ground itself. Names whispered in memory, tied to bodies, tied to stories that could no longer hide. "They all knew," she said. "And none of them acted." He exhaled, heavy, letting the moment hang. Her gaze moved across the empty field, distant, focused. "This changes everything," she said. "Everything." By nightfall, the town felt unsettled. Doors were closed earlier than usual, windows drawn tight. The sheriff moved through the streets, hat pulled low, flanked by deputies. Faces averted. Conversations stopped mid-word. "Sheriff," someone said in a low voice. He flinched, like the sound had struck him. Even the men who had been loyal for years began to whisper the word among themselves, cautious, urgent. The power of silence had failed. The girl's voice, her single word repeated across streets, diners, barns, and churches, had fractured the authority built over decades. The ranch hand looked to her, seeing determination in her posture, fire in her eyes. "They'll remember this night," he said. She nodded, expression hard. "They'll remember," she echoed. And out at the county line, the mass grave lay exposed, a warning to anyone still willing to deny it. Every shadow in the field, every rustle in the trees, seemed to whisper her word again, "Sheriff." The widow met them at the edge of the grave, dust clinging to her dress, eyes hard and steady. The girl stood beside the ranch hand, revolver loose in her hands but ready. Bones half buried, remnants of old lives, stretched across the shallow trench. "They're all here," the widow said. "And some you knew." The girl's fingers trembled as she touched the soil. I can't." "You can," the widow interrupted, firm. "You're the last piece. The proof. You always were." The ranch hand stepped closer. "Proof of what?" "Of resistance," the widow said, voice low, deliberate. "Your mother tried. She tried to stop them. She failed. But she left you." The girl's eyes widened. "Mother, she led them once," the widow said. "Before the sheriff buried the rest. You were hidden, protected, watched. All this time." The girl swallowed hard. "I didn't know, no one told you," the ranch hand said, quiet. "They thought ignorance would keep you safe. But it never does." She looked at the girl, steady. "Now you know. Now you act." The girl crouched beside the first set of bones, brushing dirt away with her hand. Names scratched into worn tags, letters she had never read before, now legible. She whispered them, one by one. The ranch hand knelt beside her, listening. They all trusted her," he said. "All your mother's friends, her allies. She called us women who don't leave," the widow said. "And now you're one of them." The girl looked up, fear and understanding mixing in her eyes. "Then what do I do?" The widow pulled her close for a moment. "Tell. Not in court. Not in whispers. Public. People need to hear it from you." The girl's lips pressed into a thin line. "All of it?" "Everything. Names. Dates. Places. What they tried to hide. What they buried." The girl nodded slowly. "And the sheriff?" The widow's eyes darkened. "He'll come, of course. But you don't need him to be afraid. You need him to be exposed." They spent hours going through letters, matching names, dates, memories. Each discovery weighed on the girl, etched itself into her bones. "She fought," she said quietly, voice tight with awe. "She fought, and they silenced her." The ranch hand's hand brushed hers. "You're not silenced," he said. "Not anymore." She looked at him, eyes wet, fire beneath fear. "I have to do this. I have to show them." The widow nodded. "Then you will." "Not alone, but guided. That's what inheritance means. You inherit the fight. You inherit the truth. And you carry it forward." Outside, the wind moved over the field, lifting dust, carrying the smell of earth and old bones. The sheriff watched from a distance, hat pulled low, shadow blending with the trees. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that claimed control even when control was slipping. The girl rose, revolver at her side. She faced the open field. "I will speak," she said. "They'll hear me." The ranch hand stood beside her. "And if they try to stop you?" "Then they'll fail," she said. Her voice was steadier than it had been all night. The widow placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're ready." The sheriff's men patrolled near the tree line, unaware of how much had shifted. Every whisper, every rumor, every secret she had uncovered was now hers to tell. The girl drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of memory, fear, and courage press down at once. She could see the horizon, the dark outlines of the county beyond. "I'll show them," she said, low. "I'll tell everyone." The ranch hand nodded. "And you won't be alone." They moved slowly away from the grave, step by step. The girl's revolver stayed at her side, loose in her grip but ready. Every bone, every jar, every mark they had burned or uncovered seemed to watch them, silent witnesses to what had been hidden for decades. "They'll remember your mother," the ranch hand said softly. "And they'll remember you," the widow added. The girl looked back once, over her shoulder at the mass grave, at the proof of generations of silence and suffering. She felt fear and anger and determination all in one pulse. "I am not afraid," she said. "Not anymore." The wind lifted the dust into her hair. The ranch hand felt the chill of the night settle over them, but the girl didn't shiver. She carried the past with her like armor. And in that moment, she knew the inheritance wasn't just bones and names, it was survival, defiance, and voice. The ranch hand glanced at the sheriff, still watching from afar, a smile frozen on his face. He didn't move. He thought he had one. But the girl had something he never counted on, the truth, spoken and unbroken, ready to ripple across the land. The night was thick with tension when they came for the ranch hand. Horses stomped the dirt outside, hooves echoing through the empty fields. He stepped out of the barn, hands raised, revolver left behind, and the deputy's boots crunched toward him. "Ranch hand," the deputy said, voice flat. "You're coming with us." "On what charge?" he asked, jaw tight. "We'll tell you at the station." The words had no warmth. Two more men flanked him, eyes narrowed, hands twitching near their belts. He realized then how little control he had. The girl watched from the barn doorway, eyes sharp, hands gripping her revolver. He wanted to tell her to stay back, but she didn't move. She never did. At the station, the room was cold. Lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. The sheriff sat behind the desk, calm as ever, as if he owned the place. "You're late," he said, voice flat. "I came when they brought him," the ranch hand said, defiant. The sheriff didn't smile. "You know why he's here," he said, looking at the deputy. The ranch hand crossed his arms. "I didn't do anything." "You helped her," the sheriff said. "That counts." "Counts for what?" The sheriff leaned back, hands folded. "For complicating things." "You're lying," the ranch hand said, voice rising. "You know I'm telling the truth." The sheriff didn't respond. His calm pressed down like a weight. "You're too stubborn," he said, finally. "You think you understand, but you don't." Meanwhile, the girl moved through the empty streets alone. She approached the sheriff's office from the side, silent and deliberate. She pulled a small recorder from her pocket. Every step she took carried the weight of months of memory, fear, and courage. She slipped it under a loose board near the desk. The sheriff didn't see her. He never did. She whispered softly, fingers steady, recording every word he spoke. "They think they own this land," he said to his deputies. "They think it's all mine." His tone casual, but every sentence betrayed control. The girl stayed, invisible, recording everything. Back in the interrogation room, the ranch hand refused to sit. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Why threaten me?" "You think this is a threat," the sheriff said, calm. "This is control. This is order. You disrupt it, you face it." The ranch hand leaned forward. "You lied to everyone. You hid everything. And now they'll know." "They'll never know," the sheriff said, voice hardening. "You're wrong," the ranch hand said. "They're already starting to know." The words hung between them, sharp and alive. The sheriff's eyes flicked briefly to the clock. "You just don't understand the weight of your choices." The girl slipped back into the shadows outside, recorder in hand. She could hear the voices inside, sharp and slow. "Everything stays hidden if you know where to look," the sheriff said, almost conversational. "You break the chain, you answer for it." The ranch hand didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid." The sheriff stared. "You will be." They always are, eventually. She pressed a finger to the button, capturing the cadence, the threat, the arrogance. Every word would become proof. Every lie recorded. Hours passed. The men around the sheriff moved in careful formation, closing ranks, but the girl knew their weakness. They thought loyalty was stronger than truth. They were wrong. She slipped away, recorder tucked tight, ready to use it. The ranch hand sat alone in the cold room, silent now, waiting. The sheriff's voice carried through the hall, firm and practiced, unaware of the quiet rebellion growing just beyond his sight. And when she finally moved back to him, eyes steady and focused, she held the proof of everything he had tried to hide. They could close ranks, but the truth had already slipped inside the walls, ready to spread. The town hall was packed. People murmured in low, nervous tones, glancing at one another, trying to place blame without speaking it. The girl stood at the back, recorder hidden in her coat, eyes scanning the crowd. The sheriff sat near the front, calm, confident, as if the whispers hadn't reached him yet. The ranch hand slipped in beside her, bruises fading, shoulders tense. "You ready?" he whispered. She nodded, fingers tightening on the coat pocket. "This ends tonight." She stepped onto the platform. Silence fell instantly, thick and heavy. "Everyone," she said, voice clear, low. "Listen to this." She pressed play. The sheriff's voice came out of the small speaker, casual, flat, arrogant. "They think they own this land. They think it's all mine. You break the chain, you answer for it. You think this is a threat? This is control. You disrupt it, you face it." People froze. Eyes widened. Conversations died midword. A man whispered, "Sheriff." The sheriff's face went pale. He leaned forward, trying to catch the source of the sound. The girl pressed the button again. Every threat, every lie, every order, captured. "Enough," the sheriff barked. His hand went to his gun, slow and deliberate. "Step down," he said. "Now." The crowd shuffled backward. The ranch hand moved beside the girl, protective. "She's telling the truth," he said, loud enough for some to hear. "All of it." The sheriff's eyes darted between them, scanning, calculating. "You don't know what you're doing," he hissed. "We're in charge here." The girl ignored him. She pressed play again. The room filled with his voice, undeniable proof. Murmurs spread like fire. "He lied," someone said. "All these years," another voice. "I knew it." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He realized control was slipping. The people who had bowed, who had whispered, who had stayed silent, now stared at him, seeing him for what he really was. "Step in front of me," the widow said, suddenly beside the girl, revolver in hand, steady and unwavering. "You're not touching her." The sheriff's hand trembled as he reached for his gun. The widow's eyes never left him. "Back," she said, voice flat. The sheriff froze. The girl pressed play once more. The room erupted, shouts overlapping, chaos spilling through the hall. People were pointing, arguing, some crying, some laughing. The sheriff barked orders to deputies, trying to regain control. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, exposed. The ranch hand grabbed his arm. "It's done," he said. "All of it. They've heard." The girl stepped forward, voice rising. "You can't hide anymore. Names, dates, promises broken. We've survived, and now everyone knows." Everyone. The crowd reacted, a mix of fear, relief, and disbelief. A deputy lunged toward her, and the widow stepped in, revolver steady. "Hands off," she said. The deputy froze, eyes wide. Outside, the ranch hand could hear the hum of engines, men arriving too late. Their power was already gone. The sheriff's face twisted, rage boiling, but no one obeyed him. No one. The girl's voice continued, relentless, furious, and clear. "We're done living in silence. Done hiding the truth." The sheriff's hand hovered near his gun again. The widow pressed herself in front of the girl, protective, immovable. "One step, and it's over," she said. The crowd's murmurs swelled into a roar. "Sheriff," someone said, shaking. Another voice, "We hear you now." His authority shattered in minutes, the quiet power of his position dissolved by a single word repeated, amplified, and claimed. The girl's chest heaved. She pressed the button one last time, letting the sheriff's own words expose him fully. The room trembled with chaos, disbelief, and the sudden liberation of truth. Then the gunshot rang out. One sharp, cutting report. Heads turned. Silence fell over part of the hall, fear thick in the air. People froze. The ranch hand's hand went to the girl's shoulder. The widow's eyes scanned, alert. Smoke drifted through the doorway from outside. No one moved. The sheriff collapsed backward, a stunned expression frozen on his face. Chaos erupted again, but now it carried the weight of finality. The girl exhaled, voice trembling, but strong. "It's over," she said. The crowd echoed, uncertain, relieved. The ranch hand let her hand go, stepping back, knowing the moment had shifted everything. The morning after was silent. The sheriff lay still under the oak outside town, hat tipped low, gun nowhere in sight. No celebration rose from the crowd. Only whispers, tentative steps, and the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. The girl walked back toward the stable, the revolver in her hand now heavier with memory than threat. Chains hung loose, swaying gently in the wind. She paused at the door, fingers brushing the splintered wood. The ranch hand followed her, quiet, careful. "You're sure?" he asked. She nodded, eyes scanning the empty fields, the remnants of fire, the jars long gone. "It's time." She turned the latch slowly. The door creaked, the sound sharp in the quiet morning. Inside, the stable smelled of old hay, damp wood, and dust. Memories pressed against the walls, names carved, marks of survival, all the secrets she had learned. The ranch hand stepped in beside her. "It's empty," he said, though he could feel the weight of the past heavy in the air. She let the door swing fully open, sunlight spilling across the floorboards. Chains rattled gently, moved by the wind. "It's not about what's inside," she said softly. "It's about what remains." He nodded. They walked through the barn, the girl moving slowly, touching the walls, feeling the marks, the ghosts of nights that had stretched into decades. "Do you ever think we'll stop remembering?" he asked, voice low. "No," she said. "We carry it, but we don't let it control us anymore." She knelt and brushed dust from a corner, seeing the outlines of names carved long ago. "They thought fear would last forever," she whispered. They were wrong. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the boards. Birds took flight across the horizon. Life returned in small ways. The ranch hand glanced at her. "So what now?" She rose, shoulders straight, gaze steady. "Now," she said, "we rebuild. We don't forget, but we live. That's what matters." He nodded. Silence stretched between them, comfortable and tense at once. She moved toward the door, leaving it open. The wind caught the chains again, moving them in lazy arcs. Shadows flickered across the hay, but she didn't flinch. The past had been claimed, the truth spoken. What remained now was survival, memory, and a choice. The widow appeared, quietly, from the backfields. "She's ready," she said, looking at the girl. "Ready for what?" the ranch hand asked. "For everything," the widow said. "For the story, for the land, for the people who never got a voice." The girl looked at her, fingers brushing the sun-warmed wood of the stable door. "I choose to stay," she said. "Here. With the land. With the memory." The ranch hand exhaled, relief and awe mixing in his chest. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. She smiled faintly, nodding. "I won't." Footsteps approached from the distance, careful, hesitant. The widow stayed silent, hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder. Shadows moved across the field, but nothing threatened them. "The sheriff," the ranch hand murmured. The girl shook her head. "He's gone. We don't chase ghosts anymore." The wind carried the scent of smoke, fire long extinguished but still lingering like a memory. The sun hit the old barrels, the scattered tools, the empty jars. Everything bore witness. Everything remained. They walked outside together, the girl leading the way, revolver slung at her side, eyes fixed on the horizon. The ranch hand followed, feeling the weight of all they had seen, survived, and exposed. The widow trailed behind, quiet, her gaze steady on the land, the barns, the shadows, and the open sky. The stable door swung gently behind them, empty chains rattling softly in the wind. Finally, the girl stopped. She turned to the ranch hand. "What we do now," she said, "is remember. And we make sure it doesn't happen again. We survive. That's the only justice that remains." He nodded. The sun rose higher, catching the dust, the wood, the chains. The field stretched out, empty but alive. They walked forward, together, carrying memory and courage. The stable door, left open, moved slowly in the wind. Chains swayed, catching the sunlight, echoing faintly. Nothing more needed to be said. Silence filled the space, heavy, peaceful, final. The sun was low now, red and heavy over the fields. The girl walked along the fence line, revolver slung loosely, eyes scanning the horizon. The ranch hand followed, boots kicking up dry dust. "Do you ever sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. Not until it all settles." He glanced at her, seeing the fire in her eyes, the way memory and courage mixed. The town, the people. Will they believe it? Will they remember? She didn't answer at first. She looked to the east, where the barn stood quiet, shadows stretched long across the hay. "Some will," she said finally. "Some will forget. But the ones who stay, they'll pass it on. Like we do." The widow appeared from the far field, her steps quiet, measured. "They're watching," she said. "Always." The girl's eyes narrowed. "Let them watch. We're not hiding anymore." The ranch hand clenched his fists. "You're ready to face them all?" She smiled faintly, almost cruelly. "I've faced worse. The sheriff was nothing compared to what's left behind in this land." He remembered the jars, the names, the nights she spent chained. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known," he said. She didn't respond. She just walked forward, each step deliberate, carrying the weight of truth with her. The wind shifted. The echo of hooves in the distance, faint but steady. She turned slightly, hand hovering near the revolver. "They think they can scare us," she said. "But they've already lost. Their fear is all that remains for them." The ranch hand nodded, understanding. "And for everyone else?" "For everyone else," she said, voice stronger, "hope remains." They reached the old well behind the barn, the one she had hidden in. Dust swirled in the sunlight. The boards still bore marks, faint but visible. "This place," she said, touching the wood, "it remembers. And it teaches. It whispers the truth, even when we're too young to hear." The widow crouched beside her. "And now?" she asked. "Now," the girl said, "we make sure the whispers are loud enough to be heard." She gestured to the horizon. "We rebuild. We remember. And we survive. That's what matters. That's the inheritance." He exhaled slowly. "You've carried it all this time," he said. "All the weight of everyone before you." She looked at him, expression steady. "I carry it so no one else has to." The wind picked up, moving dust along the path. The chain marks in the stable seemed to rattle, even from a distance. The past wasn't gone, it echoed, but she was alive, unbroken.